Hey folks, today what we're going to be looking at is an end-to-end view of configuring performance management. So we'll go over things like review periods, template sections, the eligibility profiles, and putting them all together in the template. We'll see that they're all kind of little building blocks and how they all come together at the end. So with that, we're going to jump right into the system, and we can see that we are logged in as Curtis Fetty, who is an HR administrator. He has access to configure the performance management areas. We'll go ahead and click on My Client Groups and then this Performance tile. And that will take us to this Performance Administration area. Just scrolling down, we'll want to go to the Setup Maintenance area for most of our configuration. And then these are the things that we'll look at today. We'll skip our questions and questionnaires. Those can get a little bit repetitive. That's just not what we want to focus on. But I do want to focus on our review periods, our performance roles. We'll take a quick glance at eligibility profiles, document types, sections, process flows, and then finally, performance templates. So our first thing that we're going to look at is our review period. This is really going to define the period of time in which the review is going to apply to. These are very simple to set up. You can click Add, and that will take you to the new review period page. We can simply give it a name, a start date, and an end date, a description if we want, and we can determine if it's active or inactive. As simple as that. The way these are configured, it works best using focal point, having all of your reviews for the entire organization at one time. If you wanted to do an anniversary-based review, you could do so. It's going to take a little bit more configuration with your eligibility profiles, but focal point is going to be the best practice for using Oracle's performance management. After you've configured your review period, we can go back and we'll look at our performance roles. This is another one of those foundational pieces to performance management. And these are going to be the actors in the performance process. Now there will be some seated ones here. We'll click Add, and it's very simple. You can give it a name, give it a description as well. This checkbox will, as it says, allow the role to view worker, manager, participant ratings, comments, questionnaires, and things like that. And you can determine the type, manager or participant. We already have an employee type or a worker type created, but we'll want a from date and a to date. Just simple effective date things. I like to do 1/1/1951 to 12/31/47/12. Ensure that it's always available, and then you can click submit once you're ready to go. Our next stop on the train here is going to refer to our eligibility profiles. These are really powerful tools. You can get really granular, you can get really broad. These are what we use to narrow down who is going to be included in a given document period and a performance template in general. If we wanted to create one, we'll click create and then create the participant profile. And that will take us to the eligibility profile creation page. We'll need to give it a name before we can make any changes. But each of these are criteria and then sub-criteria within the larger categories of what we can narrow people down by. So if we wanted to go to employment and assignment status, we would just hit this plus, give it a sequence. I always do 10 just for out of habit. And then we can say we only want individuals that are active payroll eligible to be included. And as easy as that, we can save and close. If we want to narrow this down even further by maybe the department, we only want individuals who are in the accounting department or the finance department. We could add each of these, and that will make our net a little bit more narrow based off of the criteria of what we're putting in here. Really cool, really powerful tools. Something to call out, you also have the option to use formulas or fast formulas to narrow down that eligibility criteria. That can get a little bit more complex, but you do have the option to use some sorts of code to provide a more dynamic calculation of who is and isn't included in this eligibility profile. Very neat tool. I'd recommend playing around with it a little bit to see what it's capable of doing. A lot of really exciting features. We're going to cancel out of here and go back to our main screen. Next up, we have our performance document types. This is a pretty simple piece. It essentially acts as a bridge to connect things like goals, compensation, just ways to connect our performance evaluations and ways to store them. We can click add to create a new document type. It'll look very similar to our review period. We have a name, and then we have an effective start, an effective end date, a description, and a status. Not a lot of configuration to go on here, but certainly an option to add these document types. We'll scroll down to our template sections. This is the exciting bit. This is where we actually see things that our users are going to be interacting with when they're completing their performance evaluations. I'll go ahead and click add, and we can look through the different types of sections that are available for us. All right. I'm just going to give a name and a description here. And then we have our from date and our to date. I would recommend 1/1/1951 to 12/31/47/12. And we can see there's a drop down here of section type. These are some of the section types we have available. Now, competencies, are going to refer to content items on our talent profiles that are going to be evaluated. Performance goals and development goals will be integrated with our goals module. Our overall summary is going to provide us an overall rating, as well as an area where you can provide some notes or comments. Worker final feedback is going to refer to an employee's ability to provide feedback on the employment process, the performance process. Manager final feedback is also a manager's ability to provide feedback on that final performance process. Questionnaire is where, as the name implies, you can include a questionnaire. These can be questions that show up dynamically based off of answers to other questions. They can be free form where there is just text to be filled out freely. They can be multiple choice. They can be checked from like radio buttons, checking just one option, checking multiple options, a lot of different abilities there. And then dynamic skills is going to relate to our talent profiles as well to evaluate the skills of an employee. As we scroll down, we'll have different options depending on the section type. For a competency section, is going to ask us which competency section we want to refer to. Depending on your organization, you might have these divided into different things, such as technical versus core competencies or something of the likes. We can choose a section rating model. We can choose our performance rating model if we would like. If we want to have any calculations, we can choose how that rule would be. I like the average. It seems to make the most intuitive sense to me. And if you want to give a section rating, so rate your competencies in general, you could do that. If not, you could always choose not to. As we scroll down, we can include weights if we need to. A section comments, overall comments on how you're doing with those competencies. If we wanted to rate the items, if we want to have a target performance rating, if we want to use that section rating model to be applied to the employee's overall performance evaluation rating. We can enable or disable item comments. We can choose weights. And then finally, down at the bottom, we can populate with competencies using a certain profile type. So maybe a position or a job profile, or if we have certain content items that we want everyone to be evaluated against, we can add those specifically here. Really cool, really neat feature. That's going to be the most complicated, I would say, of the template section configuration. Our performance goals section is just going to have these sort of bottom parts where it's asking about the rating calculations. The development goals will be the same. The overall summary is just going to ask us the section rating model as well as the rating calculations and if we want some comments overall. Our worker final feedback and our manager final feedback have no configurations at this section level. Our questionnaire, we can enable scoring if we would like, if we have questions that we'd like to score. And then our dynamic skills is going to look very similar to our competencies. Just a few more options here at the item processing level on how we want to process those skills. We'll go ahead and cancel out of here and look at our performance process flows. This is going to refer to the steps in our performance process. I'll click add so we can look at a blank one. So we can provide it with a name, comments, our from and to date. And as we scroll down, we can see that each of these are checkboxes to show that yes, we want this involved in our process. So yes, we do want a worker to self-evaluate. And yes, we want the manager to evaluate. As I check some of these grayed boxes become, I'm now able to select them because they are options that relate specifically to either one or both of these. If I only have one of these selected, obviously they cannot be performed concurrently because both of them aren't happening. But if they are selected at the same time, then yes, we can choose to have them performed concurrently. If we want to lock managers out of the evaluation task after they've finished it, we can do so as well. Participant feedback, if we wanted third parties, maybe matrix managers, maybe peers or associates to be involved in the performance process, we could do so. As we check this, all of these options get added. We can uncheck it and we'll see that they get grayed out once again. We have the option to include an approval and then a second approval if necessary. I recommend if you are having your approvals in this to automatically submit them when the previous task is complete, just because sometimes a manager could, let's say they finish their evaluation, they click submit, they think that the process has already begun. It's already starting its approval. Well, then it gets caught and hung up. Automatically submitting these approvals ensures that the process continues to move along and we're still rolling through. This document sharing task refers to a manager sharing the document with the employee. If this is checked, then the employee will not be able to see a manager's comments or ratings until they are shared by the manager with this task. This can be locked for calibration, so if you need to go back and edit any performance ratings for calibration, that can be done. And if we want to ensure that the worker is also acknowledging that they received it, we can do so. We have our review meeting task, which is scheduling a formal meeting and capturing that within the system. That could be an option. We could create a calendar invite for this meeting, and we can include, much like our document sharing task, that the employee must acknowledge that the review meeting was held. And then finally, we have our final feedback and our manager final feedback tasks. These are going to be, as we described earlier, providing feedback on the overall performance process, just a kind of last way to get your words in. Down here, we can see all of our tasks that we've selected. If we want to change the sequence, we can double click and type in the sequence number. Oops, 15, I meant to type in 25. So now our manager evaluation occurred before our worker self-evaluation. If we want to change this from worker to associate self-evaluation, maybe we want to refer to our employees by a different word to match our vernacular, we can do so. We just double click and make that edit. If everything looks good to us, we can submit when we're ready to go. After you've created all of these different building blocks, then comes the exciting part of putting them together in a performance template. We'll quickly go through that. So clicking on this performance templates task, and we'll just peek into one that's already been configured. We'll look at this annual evaluation here. So at the top here, we can see, we can give it a name. We can choose a template type, either standard or anytime. We can provide a description, a start and end date, and we're starting to see some of our building blocks come back together. Our document type, which can be applied document-wide. We can click this checkbox, which will synchronize our goals section. If we do so, we'll need to choose the goals section that we're going to be pulling from. Our eligibility profile is something we looked at before. If we want to apply an eligibility profile to anyone that uses this template in general, we could do so. And then at the bottom here, we have our contributors, the worker role or the manager role, whoever we want to include. Maybe we don't want workers. We only want our managers to evaluate our employees. We can certainly do so. Also, we have our participants. If we wanted to include additional individuals besides an employee or a manager, we could do so here. We can enforce a minimum if necessary. You need at least 3 other people involved in this process. Bang, we can do so. I'm going to click continue to move to the next step. And this is where we see our process flows, right? As we attach a process flow, the steps that we have chosen will appear here, and we can choose the number of alert days and critical alert days. So these are the days out from the due date where these are going to be, alerts are going to be applied. Down below, we have options for calculated ratings and who is able to see them. We also have some options on if we want to do stars versus numbers, if we want to include a digital signature, if we want the manager to have access to check-ins, feedback notes, any requested feedback, and if we want to include a minimum and a maximum character limit for any comments that are entered into the evaluation. We also have options to edit how participants are able to involve themselves in this process. We'll click continue to keep going forward. Our structure tab here is where we're going to add our sections. We have two options here. Add is going to create a new section. Select existing sections where we are going to select sections that have been pre-configured on the screen that we looked at before. If we click this little pencil, we're able to see the processing by role. These are the individuals who are going to have a part to play in this section. So if we only want our managers to be involved in the overall summary, we would not include the worker in this step, and vice versa. A lot of these are going to be inherited from what we've configured at the section level. So that's just kind of a neat little feature, but if you need to make any changes here on who is able to see what is required for who, you're able to do so by role. We'll continue to our content section. If we needed to add competencies from the section themselves, we could do so. If we need to add it from a profile, we could, or if we wanted to add them directly, we can do that as well. This is just to show us what competencies are going to show up in our competency section or any other sections that have content items that need to be added. Then we have our document periods here. These are going to be the instances in which the evaluation is rolled out. So we can see we have our annual evaluation with years 2021 all the way up to 2026. We can see then the eligibility profile is attached. Let's click this little pencil to look in. We can see we have our annual evaluation, eligibility profile. You can see this is not yet available to use. So it looks like we were working on this, but we didn't want to roll it out just yet. That's fine. Once it's ready to go, we'll click that check to make it available to use. Just a note here, this checkbox isn't marked. If we mark this, now this annual evaluation eligibility profile is required. We must fit this criteria in order for us to receive this evaluation. I'll leave that unchecked for now though. We have our document type, which is added as kind of that bridge, that indicator. We also have our due dates down here to ensure that our evaluations are being completed in a timely manner. If this all looks good to us, we could save. And then we can continue to our summary. This is going to just provide us all the information that we looked at before, everything that we've seen in one concise page, and then we can submit if we're happy with that. I'll go ahead and go back. We'll scroll down to this eligibility batch process at the very bottom here. If we click on that link, it's going to take us to just a batch process page, and we can assign a performance document. It's going to ask us when it's effective, what the review period, what the performance document name or the document period name, and if we want to create an eligible performance evaluation or an eligible performance document. So we'll say 2026 evaluation, and sure, we'll create a document. I usually leave the rest of this as is and just let it run. But once we click submit, the process is going to begin evaluating who is eligible and who is not eligible for those document periods that we've selected, creating performance evaluations, assigning them to individuals, and beginning their performance process. Really exciting, really cool. I hope this has been helpful. Just a quick guide on how to use this technology. Let me know in the comments if there was something that you found helpful today or a tricky configuration little hack that you found during your configurations that you found helpful. Thanks so much.